Hey guys, and welcome back to more Eldritch Moon card previews. Today, let's look at some possible new additions to the always entertaining Super Friends deck. For those who may not know, Super Friends is a deck archetype built around Planeswalkers, a lot of them. In fact, it's hard to say that these decks are just built around Planeswalkers, it's more like they are Planeswalkers. No, seriously, it's not uncommon to find a deck comprised of only Planeswalkers in Super Friends. So with these decks so heavily invested in getting Planeswalkers out, typically creatures have kinda gone to the wayside. More and more are players of Super Friends relying on enchantments and non-creature spells to deal with threats and to protect their board. With the creation of Oath cards in Oath of the Gatewatch, these decks found new tools to synergize with their playstyles. Oath cards are legendary enchantments that both have an enter the battlefield effect, as well as some secondary ability that synergizes with Planeswalkers you control. These cards were designed for heavy Planeswalker decks, giving you the most value for each Oath. This, of course, makes Oath cards very valuable in Super Friends. These enchantments also symbolize when a new Planeswalker takes the Oath and joins the Gatewatch, the lore equivalent to the Super Friends deck. Since this doesn't happen every set, it was unknown when our next Oath card would be printed. But in Eldritch Moon, it looks like the Gatewatch and Super Friends are getting some new love. Liliana Vest will be joining the Order, and has given her Oath. This is Oath of Liliana, a legendary enchantment for 2 generic and a single black. When Oath of Liliana enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. At the beginning of each end step, if a Planeswalker entered the battlefield under your control this turn, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. All of the Oath cards are unique and feel much like the color and Planeswalker they're meant to represent. The Oath for Liliana is no exception here. Honestly, I feel like this enchantment is very similar to Gatekeeper of Malakir. Basically 3 mana, opponent sacks a creature and you get a 2/2. Obviously it's not a 1-to-1 comparison. Oath of Liliana has the ability to grant way more 2/2s, but Gatekeeper is on the board immediately. For a card in Super Friends, I feel like it's somewhat a combination of Oath of Gideon and Oath of Chandra. It gives you a creature, but also provides some removal. Having a player sack a creature can either be amazing or downright terrible, seeing how they're allowed to choose the target. Getting a 2/2 for summoning a Planeswalker is also nice, but it doesn't give you more if you summon multiple Planeswalkers in a single turn. At least it provides some protection to your new Super Friend. It's not a perfect card, but it's removal and protection. A deck with Planeswalkers loves them both. Needless to say, in Limited this card is typically a 3 mana Diabolic Edict. Dreadful, just avoid it. But Oath of Liliana wasn't the only super friendly card spoiled for Eldritch Moon. We also got what I feel is probably one of the best additions to this deck style. Let's take a look at Deploy the Gatewatch. This mythic sorcery for 4 generic and double white allows you to look at the top 7 cards of your library, put up to 2 Planeswalker cards from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This card is Super Friends' best friend. Whenever it's played, you'll of course have free range to pick any 2 Planeswalkers from the 7 you most likely drew. That is, unless you get gypped by a lot of lands or non-creature spells. Regardless, you'll probably have some great choices. Putting them onto the battlefield directly allows you to trigger both of their effects that turn. Depending on what you grab, it could make it really hard for your opponent to come back. Playing 2 Planeswalkers in 1 turn is a huge tempo swing in your favor. It's just a lot of stuff your opponent has to deal with. At the relative steal of only 6 mana, you can play a couple huge drops much earlier and with the added protection of a friendly board. Just trust in your deck, snag what you need, and the game should be in good hands. This card's even kind enough to put the other cards at the bottom of your library rather than the graveyard. It's kinda hard to reanimate Planeswalkers. My only gripe is that it does cost a good sum of mana to play. Of course, it's not super pricey for what it does, but anything at 6 mana could be hard to play against some decks. Unlike Oath of Liliana, which has some mild chance in standard decks, Deploy the Gatewatch is just a tad bit niche for that format. In most standard decks, including Super Friends, the roster is built with supporting creature cards, but every creature card taking a Planeswalker slot makes Deploy the Gatewatch worse. Now, for formats like Modern, this card's gonna do some amazing work, but Standard and Limited are probably a little unrealistic. Regardless of how these cards fare in Standard or Limited, they're welcomed inclusions to a niche but insanely fun deck. Let me know what you think about Oath of Liliana and Deploy the Gatewatch in the comments below. Are you excited to add them to your Super Friends deck? If you enjoyed the video, consider throwing it a like, and sub to the channel for all the latest Eldritch Moon spoilers, news, and lore. Support the channel by visiting my Patreon page and by following me on social media. Find links to those in the description below. As always guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.